Hey, it's Kim. I'm so glad that you decided to join me for today's video. I am happy to have you here. So today I'm going to be going over my health and fitness planner. I have a previous video when I first set this up at the top of the year, or maybe the end of last year. Not exactly sure when it went up, but I will link it for you if you want to see like the origin story of this planner. But I'm doing an update because it's working and I kind of want to document that, and I want to talk a bit more about how it's working for me and give some examples of what I'm doing and what I'm using, what's working, maybe talk through some things that didn't work, because when I was looking for inspiration for health and fitness planners back in 2022 or early 2023, I couldn't really find anything. So here I am to help for those of us who are interested in this type of planning or this way of tracking certain things, and you like to have it either in a separate planner, or maybe you can take some of these ideas and some of these tips and put it in your main planner to see how that would work for you. So starting from the top, I will say that this is in a Vanderspec Codex, and that is designed to fit a Hobonichi Weeks size planner. And I am not using a Hobonichi Weeks this year. I am actually using the Paper Test Designs weekly notebook. So the cover that I have is a Codex. It's a regular Codex, not a Codex Mega. So it's not made to fit a really thick book, even though the Paper Test Designs is a very thick book. So this fits decently well, fits perfectly fine for my purposes. However, if you're a person who likes to chunk up your planners and put a lot of different tip-ins and all that other stuff, it probably wouldn't fit after this book starts to expand. So keep that in mind. So in the front of the book, I don't have anything new. Everything pretty much looks the same. Actually, this sticker is new. So this is another sticker I got from my daughter. It is a pizza, and it's actually in a box that is shaped like a cat. So again, we're going with the food theme that I have with all of these stickers in the front. And now we've added cats to the mix. How did I have that? I think like that. And then there's a pizza here with a little mouse on it, and a fork with spaghetti and like a barcode. And then this pen, I believe, is from Kubo and Lucy. I think it's a magnetic pen. And then the front, I just have some paper that I found at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, and it is like a terrazzo kind of print, and it's in the colors that go really well with everything that I'm doing, or the color scheme theme that I have going on inside this planner, which is also inspired by these markers. And I'll show you how I'm using that throughout, just to kind of keep everything cohesive and pretty as well as functional. So that's all the same as I've had it set up. Here's where I have some sticky notes parked that I use here and there, and the other deco that I have in the front. I'm not going to go through every single thing. That is in my video, the setup video that I mentioned earlier. So for this calendar, I was correct in that I knew I wouldn't use it. So I had that one race that we had already registered for marked with a little sticker, and then that was it. But getting into the Perpetual calendar in the planner, I did use this, and I will zoom you in, of course. So I did use this throughout the months, and what I was doing, which was my original plan, was to use this color code or this key to signify the types of workouts I was doing for each day. Honestly, for no other reason than to just see it all on one page. I think it's just, very pretty. Maybe a little bit inspiring. So that's what I've been doing. And you see a lot of orange. It's actually Tombow 912, which is called Pale Cherry. And that was to signify all of the runs that I did, because at the start of the year, I was focused on training for that half marathon that I mentioned that happened on April 28th. So that was the color that I used for runs. And then that green Tombow 312, Holly, I believe it's called, is used for strength, or is for strength. Tombow 992, which is sand, is for cycle workouts. And Tombow 947 which I can't remember the name of, is for mobility workouts. So that's like anything like a stretching or yoga, even Pilates I might put into that category as well. So these are all the workouts that I did. It's mostly run workouts. That was really what I was focused on, and it worked extremely well. After I filled this in, and it was only the markers, I decided to add a little bit more depth. I don't know, a little bit more information. So I decided to add my daily steps. Steps, I actually don't track. I don't really care about steps, but I wanted it to just look prettier, if I'm being honest. I also was amazed by the amount of steps that would happen on, for instance, a day where I ran like 10 miles. So like 26,869 steps in that one day, you know. So I found that information interesting. Oh, and I didn't finish these. I have April 30th that I didn't write in these steps. And that day that I did the half marathon, I did 29,901 steps. Just a little bit of information that I find interesting. So before I move on, I do want to write in these steps for April 30th, which is 3,816. Because honestly, if I'm not running or doing some type of workout that involves running, maybe like walking, like an incline walk, I don't care about steps. I'm not like trying to hit a goal or anything. Definitely not like trying to hit that 10,000 steps per day. But I just put it onto this spread because I thought it was interesting. And the top section is kind of similar. I didn't really have a purpose for it during this first third of the year. So I did decide to go back and add in the total mileage that I did for each month of the year. And even looking at this, kind of like taking a step back, I can see that I did a whole lot of miles in March, 85.48, compared to like only 40.25 miles in January. So that is just a signifier that my training or my running was ramping up. And then in April, I did 57.06 miles because I was so over it. I didn't want to run anymore. I didn't want to do any run workout. So I feel like that is very obvious here. And then moving into the second third of the year, which is where we are now, it's early May. I decided to do something a little bit different for that top section. So during this period of the year, I'm going to be focused on body recomposition. So doing a lot more strength training to build back some muscle that I did lose while I was running for like the past 2 years. So that is my goal at the moment. So I'll be doing a lot of strength training, building muscle, losing fat in the process, because that's typically what happens, but I won't be eating in like a calorie deficit or anything. So I thought it would be cool to have a progress photo, maybe like at the top of these months. Now, I fully recognize and appreciate that this little photo that I'm going to be putting here is going to be so tiny that you really won't even see a whole lot of detail in it. But I still thought it would just make for a nice spread. And really, isn't that what we do? A lot of the things we do for not only functional, but for the aesthetics, right? So that they look good. So that is what I think I'm going to do up at the top. And then a carryover from my health and fitness planner that I had back in 2023. I do want to set a goal for each month, and I'll note that goal up at the top. So for May, my goal is 120 grams of protein per day. And of course, that aligns with the current overall goal of building more muscle. Protein is needed for muscle. So that's going to be my goal. And then for the days that I do hit that, I'm going to use the black dot marker. This is a Zig Clean Color dot marker, just in the black. So I'll be using that to dot the days that I hit whatever that goal is that I have predetermined. Oh, another thing that I've been noting on this overall tracker is the days where I have my cycle. So I just highlighted those dates in this grayish kind of color. I think it's Tombow in 79. Because I do kind of want to see how that relates to the workouts that I do. Because honestly, as I'm looking at just these 4 months, I don't work out a lot during that time. That's something I'm absolutely okay with. So just seeing that on an overall view explains a lot, I think, if I were just referring back to all of this information. And I do track this type of health and fitness info for that purpose as well, because I know that I'm going to want to refer back to this stuff at a later date. So let's say the next time I want to train for a half marathon, I want to see what training plans I did and how they worked and, you know, what was going on. I also like to note if I'm having any type of, I don't know, ailments or sore muscles or whatever, note down what worked for those times and what didn't work. I think that's important information to refer back to as well. So for May through August, I do think the spread is going to be pretty cool. The bottom half, I will remain using the color-coded system. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more green since that signifies strength on this spread as opposed to the orangey-ish color from running. I'm going to try to actually do more cycle workouts. I did one. Wow, that's crazy. I did one in the first third of the year. I would also like to see more brown on these spreads because mobility and stretching and flexibility, all very important when you are training just in general, whether it be for strength training or endurance training, very important. So I do want to see a mix of all of these colors in the spread going forward. And then who knows what this last third of the year will be. Like, well, if my focus will be something different, maybe it won't be body recomposition, so I won't need progress photos. Who knows? We will see once we get there. And then the monthlies have remained the same as when I first set it up. So what I was basically doing was putting down my training plan workouts on the specific days that they were supposed to be scheduled. So this is a projected training plan, not what actually happened. And then at the end of each week, I just totaled the miles that I had for that week. And the months are color coded in a sense, going in that same order that I showed you with the Tombow markers, just to keep it pretty for the most part. And the corresponding weeks in the weekly section use the same marker colors as well. So these first 4 months are all running workouts and a running training program that I was following. And then as we move into May, I'm doing strength training workouts. So there are still runs. There's about 3 to 4, actually just 3 per week so far for the first 6 weeks of this training block that I'm doing. So there are still runs programs into here. So I will still be tracking mileage and the minutes on feet, but that's not something that will be prioritized. So I've filled in the training plan that I'm covering for the next 6 weeks, and I haven't done anything else after that because I don't know like which one I'm going to switch to until that time gets here. So these monthlies are kind of just ever evolving as the days and months go on. So my weeklies are the same. I've stuck with the same weekly setup that I started back in 2023, I believe, and I stuck with it. To give you an example, I do note my focus for that week. So something I want to really hone in on, something I really want to focus on, And then I use the left side of the horizontal layout to note which workouts I'm doing for that day. And then on the right side, after the workouts are done, I'll come back and write in any notes that I have either about those workouts, about, like I said, any ailments or soreness or whatever that might have happened. It's usually only on the days that I worked out, but sometimes I will come in and fill in notes on rest days as well. And then on the right hand side, this has changed a little bit, but I'll fill in my cycle day. I did have a section for weight. I don't weigh myself, so that was kind of unnecessary in a sense. And then a section for nutrition, and then a section for sleep. And then this middle part, I kind of didn't know exactly what I wanted to use it for. I have settled on, and I'll show you the current week. So I've settled on like a self-care section as well as a meal prep section. I'll show you last week. It's a little more filled in. So for the self-care section, I want to make sure I'm doing like foam rolling. I do put in there when I have a pedicure or when I'm getting my brows done, when I do like a spa type detox bath at home. So I do consider all of that part of my health and fitness routines. So that is something that I do want to see on this spread. I believe this was a suggestion from a comment that I had in one of my prior videos about this planner, and I thought that was an amazing idea. There was also another tracker that was suggested in that video that I have added that I'll show you in the back. So that is how I'm doing that middle notes section, and then the note section or list section right under that. I have one section for miles and one for minutes, and that was very important when I was tracking how many miles I was running during my half marathon training and how many minutes on feet, because that does translate into just doing better overall at the end of a training plan. And then at the end of the week, I'll write out a summary on how I felt, things went, what I hated, what I liked, what I'm looking forward to going forward. So this was the previous week, and then this is the current week. So a thing that I did change over on the right hand side, I took out weight. As I mentioned, I don't weigh myself, so I don't need that. But I did add, instead of the nutrition section, I titled it protein. So I am again focused on eating a certain amount of grams of protein per day, and it's important for me to track that, but I'm okay with tracking it in a ballpark type of sense. So I have been doing this long enough to know around about, how much protein is in a certain thing. So I can ballpark it based on meal, how much protein I've gotten in. So for instance, for today's breakfast, it was about 30 grams of protein. So that's what I filled in, and I've split it out in that exact way. So based on meal. So we have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, and then I'll write out my total for the day, what that protein is going to be. So unlike the nutrition section for previous weeks where I was going to track protein, carbs, and fats, and then total calories, I changed that. I don't even know, where is the last time I even filled that out? Well, I changed that obviously because I wasn't using it for a number of reasons. I just don't feel like using an app to track what I'm eating. Also, I don't care about those other things. Like I don't care about counting the carbs or counting the fat or the total calories. I have a general idea of how much I do eat per day. I don't restrict to carbs or fat. And protein is just the one thing I was lacking. So I was trying to build up to a higher protein intake. So I focused it more on the information I want to see, which is all about protein. And then my sleep section remains the same. I do like to see how sleep affects my workouts, how it changes and varies depending on my cycle. So I do like to see that on the weekly layout. I still have the self-care. Oh, and then on the right-hand side, which I didn't explain in that list section, I have meal prep. So there are things that I do prep ahead of time. Not every single week, only when the mood strikes, honestly. And as the week is getting here, or as I'm setting up for the week, I will write down a few things that I might want to prep for that coming or current week and put that there. So that's how the weeklies are. And I do at the start of every month go in and just highlight all the sections. I don't fill in everything necessarily. And as you can see, I used the wrong kind of marker when I was setting up the current week. I used the Unipen oil-based ink marker, which I should not have used. I normally use my Micron 08. So FYI, on Tomoe River paper, do not use an oil-based ink. It will bleed through the pages. Alcohol-based inks bleed through as well, if you didn't know. So that's how the weeklies are. And then I haven't set up any other ones going forward with like highlighting or anything. I just do that a few weeks at a time. So after the weekly section, we get right into the notes. And this is where I set up my table of contents. I have 3 main sections back here in the notes. Now, I did mention in my setup video that I didn't need this thick of a book with this many notes. I really didn't. I just had the planner, so I decided to use this as opposed to buying a thinner Hobonichi Weeks. So Oh, I also did have a Sterling Ink Common Planner in this size, but I opted for this one because it has the weeklies laid out with a little bit more structure that I like. Otherwise, in the Sterling Ink, I would have had to draw it in. So for both of those planners, I didn't need all of the notes pages that it offers. So I don't know how I'm going to fill up all of this, but I'll show you what I've gotten to so far. So 3 main sections in my table of contents are for training, trackers, and notes. So in my training section, I do have a training log showing what training plans I'm following during the certain weeks. And I had one that was like a strength and running one at the start of the year. And then when I started actual half marathon training, I wrote down that one, and I have the start date, end date, the name of the plan, and any notes that I might have about it. And then for this one that I started technically today on May 6th, I have this one that's a 6-week training plan. So I just want to see, like I said, when I do refer back to see, oh, you know what? This is how it works. So it's kind of superficial, right? If you see a photo of yourself and you are like, I looked really good back then, what was I doing? This is where I would go to see that information. It happens to me so many times, and I'm looking at a picture from like 2017 and I'm like, girl, what were you doing? I want to know. So I go back to find out exactly what I was doing, what type of workouts I was into, what type of maybe eating plan I was into. I don't know. But that is the reason why I do find this information important. Also, you can go back and see what wasn't working. Like, you know, something that was not giving you the results that you wanted it to give you. So that's the reason why I thought adding this training log would be important and helpful. Right after that, I have endurance nutrition, and these were taken from Featherstone Nutrition on Instagram, and it's primarily about how to fuel during a long distance run. That is something I have struggled with, and I do feel like I have a much better grasp on it now that I just completed my 5th half marathon. I think I kind of get it. And then I do have a section here to write down more notes about these specific races that I've run. So the one that we just did on April 28th, I have what I plan to do on this little sticky note, how much carbs and like sodium that was gonna total up to. And then I'm gonna go in and write just a little blurb about how that worked and if there's anything I would change for next time. Because again, I don't think I'm running any more races this year. Well, not right now. I don't think I am, right? But what if in September I do decide to run one, and then I'm going to be looking back like, I know that nutrition plan before really worked. I'm not going to remember exactly what I did unless I write it down. So that is the motivation behind that section. So that's all I have currently in that training section. And then we get into the trackers. And starting with the trackers, I have a cycle tracker and a migraine tracker because these two historically for me do go hand in hand. So I want to know when I'm feeling a migraine or like when during my cycle the migraine hits. I also want to track when I take prescription medicine for the migraine because I don't always feel like I need it, but sometimes I do. So I want to see when I need it, why I might have needed it, just to kind of keep that at a bird's eye view to see how everything interacts with one another. Also in the tracking section, I have a strength tracker, which I did not use in 2023. I drew it out, but I didn't really use it. And it was pretty much because I was doing mostly endurance running for that year, not a whole lot of strength training. And the focus is on like some major lifts, squats, deadlifts, chest press, pull-ups, overhead press, and rows. So I wasn't doing a lot of that in a progressive nature to even track progress in those lifts. So that's why I didn't really use it. But going forward, especially during these few months that I'm going to be, actually several months that I'm going to be focusing on strength training, I do now believe that this tracker will come in handy and will be helpful. So it's still here, hasn't really gotten any love. All I did was go through and put like little dashes in January through April because I don't have information to track here yet, but I will. And then the next trackers I set up were for measurements. And I have based on month. As you can see, I haven't done any measurements since January. I actually probably should now, since I usually do them at the beginning of the month, and it is the 6th. So I can do measurements for May. Fill that in here just to see how things are changing, how things are trending. Since I'm doing and focusing on body recomposition, I want to build more muscle. In that process, you do typically lose fat. So your shape is going to change, even though I may weigh the exact same amount, you know, because muscle takes up or is heavier in volume. How is it? Muscle does not weigh more than fat. Fat takes up more volume than muscle. Okay, so 1 pound of fat may take up this much space, 1 pound of muscle takes up this much space. So your measurements may shift and change over this process. So I want to see what that looks like. And the other suggestion that I got in one of the comments on my previous video was to track lean body mass. And that's a great idea. And it goes hand in hand with tracking these measurements. So lean body mass is focused on how much muscle you're carrying on your body. So instead of tracking overall weight, which we don't necessarily care about, I guess if I'm not tracking fat percentage, it doesn't really matter. But lean body mass is showing me how much muscle I'm actually having on my body. So if I'm tracking or trying to build up muscle, I want to see these numbers increase over the months. I want to see these numbers, the lean body mass, increase over the months, and I want to see the measurements decrease over the months. So these two do go hand in hand. And that is the last thing I have in my trackers section. And then the next section is notes, or really miscellaneous. My first list is a packing list, or my first note is a packing list. And this is for going on runs. All of the half marathons, not all of them, 3 out of the 5 half marathons we have traveled for. So it's very important to make sure I'm packing all the things I'm going to need for the run, before the run, after the run, because it's not like I can just come right home afterwards, you know, and have access to all of those things. So I do need, for an overnight trip, a packing list just to remind myself of the things that I need to take. And then I have a packing list for my run kit, which is what I call it. So whatever I'm using in my actual running belt, what I'm going to have on hand while I'm running. And then what I have in a day bag, as I'm calling it. So if we drive to a location to do like a trail run or whatever kind of run, what I want to pack in that bag that I'm going to leave in the car, so that when we get back to the car after the run, I have these things. So those are the categories that I have for those types of bags or packing lists. And then I have a list of US marathons. So my husband has a birthday coming up, well, every year, duh. But in 2025, it is one of those like landmark kind of birthdays. And he was saying he would like to run a marathon for that time. And I said the absolute only way I will run a marathon in my life is if you ask me to run it with you. So he did have a friend that was going to run a marathon with him last year, but that plan didn't work out. So we'll see if by 2025 he still wants to run a marathon. Then we're going to be marathon training. His birthday is in the later part of the year, so I don't know if it will be like late 2025 that we'd run the marathon, or like early 2026. Who knows? Either way, I wanted to put together a list of US marathons that we would like to travel to, and to see which month of the year those are in. I have like a few Hawaii marathons on there because of course I'd love to travel to Hawaii, and just other larger marathons that are in places that we'd like to visit, because I imagine if we're gonna travel for a marathon, I want to like make it, you know, a vacation. I want to make like a few days before, a few days after. So that is the reason why I put together this list of US marathons. And then the next section is for my Apple Watch challenges. On this side, I think I'm going to do like some type of title page. I haven't quite figured it out yet. But on the Apple Watch, if you happen to have one, every month they challenge you to do something. So I put those printouts in here, and I just printed them right on like Apple Pages, which is also like Microsoft Word. Just put them in there. The screenshots from my phone, printed them out for January, February, March, and April. I did not make the one for April, which was kind of annoying, but it's okay. It happens. I was marathon training, not doing what this challenge was, so I wasn't going to hit it. But I made it for January, February, March, and I think I was just going to write down here what the actual challenge was, even though it does say it on here in these little words that you can't even really see. And my friend Joyce gave me this idea. And the reason why I decided to even put this in here, the reason why I decided to print this so large and give 1 page per month is because I have all of these pages of notes that I'm not likely to use. So I'm like, yeah, let's just do it. Whole year. So I did go through and put the header up there for each month of the year. And that's what I have. And I think maybe I'll do like a recap on this page. And that's what I have for everything in the notes pages so far. And back here I just have the grid spacing guide, as well as that color key that I showed you up in the front. So that's I'm only at page 66 in the notes pages, and there are 226. So there's a whole lot more to fill up. Will I? I don't think so, but I'm going to have fun trying, thinking of other things to add or track or whatever. So that is the update on my health and fitness planner, how it's working for me, how I'm liking it. I'm actually really, really loving it still. I explained in a previous video, I think it was either the lessons learned video. I think that was the one. I'll link it down below. But this is one of those planners. So because I am the type of person that likes to compartmentalize everything, I cannot have one planner for everything. I feel like that is just too much noise in my brain, way too messy. So I like to have things in their own separate books so that when I'm ready to look at workout information, I just pull this one out. Like I don't have to see it in my regular planner. This is one of those planners though, in the whole conglomerate of planners that I use, that I do heavily rely on. One that I'm looking in every day, nearly every day, if not every day. And one that I am very glad is in my collection, and I don't see myself never using it. Like, this is something that's very important to me. I do work out a lot, or let me rephrase that. I have already established a routine of working out. So starting to work out has never been an issue or anything, nothing that I need to track. So it's always a part of my daily life. So here is where I like to document those things. Here is where I like to review what's working, what's not, you know, things regarding my health. I also thought that I could put a section for doctor's visits, but I do usually keep that in my companion planner, but we'll see. But this is everything related to health and fitness, mostly fitness, a little bit of health. I do have, like I said, that self-care section in here as well. So mental health is an important part, plays an important part in all of this. And this has come to be a planner that I heavily rely on, and I do love having in my system. So I don't see it going anywhere. It will evolve, just like we switched from doing a whole lot of runs in that first third of the year to now we're going to be doing a whole lot of lifting. It will evolve and shift and change based on what's a current interest in my life. And I'm okay with that. I actually really like the idea that it's going to change, and I'm going to see how I evolved over the course of 2024. And I can compare this one to the 2023, and then going forward, 2025, 6, and so on. So that is the overall review of how this planner is going. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below. Also, if you have any suggestions for more ways I can use these notes pages, I'm all ears. Leave those down below as well. Thank you so much for following along on today's video. I truly do appreciate you being here. Please feel free to like and comment and subscribe if you are so inclined, and I will see you in the next one.